Introverts, how did you get a girlfriend?
She approached me at a cafe while I was on vacation. I was still in the country. She came up to me to ask me a question. We had a 2-hour conversation, and then an amazing 5-hour lunch. 2 days later, she complained about her accommodation, and I offered her my spare room. And of course, I would sleep in my couch. She accepted. Nothing happened that night, although it seems pretty clear in hindsight that we were falling for each other. I didn't want to be an idiot and make her feel uncomfortable under my roof, so trying to win her over wasn't something I seriously considered. 2 days later, I had to stay late at work, and I asked her to look after my dog while I was gone. I got home at 5 a.m., and my dog greeted me. He suddenly felt very soft and fluffy. Somehow, she thought that was what I'd asked her to do. Apparently, she didn't find the request strange at all. The following night, after we'd been talking and drinking wine for hours, it seemed she grew tired of my apparent kindness. She took the wine glass from my hand, placed it on the floor, and leaned in to kiss me. That was 26 years ago. We've been married for 23 years.
The thing about introverts is that it's hard to have a conversation with them until you find that topic they're passionate about. My husband is the introvert in our relationship. When we first met, he kept coming to the bar where I worked, and I kept asking him questions, trying to start a conversation, but I kept hitting an invisible wall. However, that didn't stop me from trying. It confuses me to think about it because I was also really angry with him. But anyway, after asking about so many things, finally, I asked him about books, and the guy never shut up again. So, for all introverts, asking questions is difficult. But they're all passionate about something, whatever it may be. If you meet someone who doesn't seem to want to talk much, but at the same time, you don't feel like they're being rude, steer the conversation toward that topic they feel comfortable talking about. Then everything else will come more easily. I can't believe my husband did not talk about that first. Who is your favorite author, or what books have you read? But introverts find it difficult. And it can even be a challenge to start a conversation.
At the bus station, during my time in the army, I was going home for Christmas, and I saw her sitting behind me. Honestly, I didn't pay much attention to her at first, but my friend sitting next to her did. After being repeatedly ignored for 2 hours, my friend reached his destination and got off the bus. Shortly after, she came and sat next to me. I got really nervous. I realized how pretty she was. We started talking. After that, we went our separate ways. We were put on different buses, and I hated myself for not getting her number. Then when the bus stopped in another state, there she was, standing right at the entrance, almost as if she was waiting for me. If my bus had arrived 15 minutes later, I would never have seen her again. Then I found out my bus was delayed because of the snow, and I wouldn't be going anywhere for at least 2 days. She approached the ticket counter and switched my ticket to where she was going, so I wouldn't be stuck for 2 days. We spent the next 4 days getting to know each other. Then it was time for our paths to separate. I didn't make the same mistake again, and I asked for her number. We had a long-distance relationship for about 6 months, until I moved back home permanently. By then, she had moved near me. She had rented an apartment. We got married 3 years later, and have been together for 10 years.
After 4 years of not dating anyone, after a breakup that emotionally devastated me, a mutual friend caught my eye, and she was interested in me, but I didn't realize it. I didn't know her very well, but I was ready to try again. I wasn't even sure I was that attracted to her, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to go on a date. We got along well. She's quite shy, and she confessed that she'd never had the courage to start talking to me. During our first date, I realized she was very intelligent, and she shared my sense of humor too. Now, many years later, we have 2 children, and we love each other very much. This was my first girlfriend. She asked me out on the first date. I met her through a night out with mutual friends. I must have made a good impression the first time we went out with a mutual friend. To be honest, I didn't find her attractive, and I was really hesitant about reciprocating her feelings because I didn't want to hurt her. When I got to know her better, I completely changed my mind. We had genuinely interesting conversations, and, of course, we had the same interests. A year or so later, we're madly in love, and I realized that she's one of the most physically beautiful people I've ever seen. It just took me a while to see it. I still think about her sometimes, but that's life. Everything would have been totally different if we had stayed together. And even though I miss her, and I miss that feeling of being completely comfortable and in love with someone, I wouldn't be the same person today. And honestly, I wasn't emotionally mature enough to sustain a relationship. I really hope she's happy. And I hope I can find someone who can make me feel like this again.
At a garage sale. It was actually my mom's garage sale. My dad was a hoarder, but not of old newspapers or glass bottles or trash. He hoarded consumer goods, like tools, music records, home improvement items, also camping gear, hunting and fishing equipment. The man had piles and piles of stuff crammed into his house, most of it very high quality and bought on clearance. My old man was a bargain hunter, even if he had no use for it. After he passed away, it was up to us to figure out what to do with a stockpile of leftover goods. That was big enough to open a store, so we sold it off for low prices in the front yard. As is tradition, it was a miserably hot summer day. My mom asked me to go and help because the house was on a busy street. And the sheer volume of stuff meant there would be tons of people, and she was right. There were 1 million people the day before. And although we had sold a lot of things, there were still many more to sell. It was a long day of speaking with strangers, which of course I don't like. But in the end, we had sold 90% of the stock. And we were getting ready to close and celebrate our success with pizza. Then this car pulls up, and this beautiful girl gets out. She starts rummaging through the records and finds some she loves. Then she signals to me and starts asking me questions. I'm a very shy person, and I spoke as little as possible with the other customers. But I did want to talk to her, and I think she thought that since she'd found some things she liked, the things she hadn't heard of might be along the same lines. I answered as best I can. I hadn't heard of most of them. I showed her around while helping other people who kept showing up. There was definitely an instant connection and a really great conversation. I didn't usually have long conversations with people I had just met, but she had to leave. So I gave her special treatment and helped her into the car. She got in and drove off, and then I realized I hadn't gotten her number. My brother and my neighbor laughed like never before at my stupidity, but I remembered she told me where she worked. It was at a restaurant at the end of the street, and she told me the days she usually worked. So I did something very unusual for me. I looked for her on Friday afternoons. I drove from my office, and I'd go to the restaurant to see her. She would sometimes stop and chat when it wasn't too busy, and then she'd go back to work, and I caught her looking at me a couple of times. Then, on my third visit, I told her I'd love to see her more. And I asked for her number. I'd never done anything like that before. I'm not a very romantic person. But with her, I didn't think twice. I sought her out without hesitation. I wanted to get to know her better. It's something you don't think about. You just feel you have to do it for that person. Now we've been together for 10 years. A marriage and a child. And we're still crazy about each other.
We met in a science fiction class at university, and we absolutely hated each other. She thought I was an idiot, and I thought the same of her. I saw her as a know-it-all. We were both very competitive, and we argued and fought about different topics. In a seemingly endless battle of knowledge, at some point we started arguing about movies based on books. I made comments about her lack of literary knowledge, and she defended herself aggressively. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were watching a movie at the theater. I realized what was happening, and my introverted self surfaced. Suddenly I was nervous and couldn't even look her in the eye. I think she noticed, but she started holding my hand. It was a side of her I hadn't seen before, but I was starting to like it a lot. She wasn't defensive with me anymore, and she was starting to become more interested in me. Several years have passed and now we're married, and we still remember how much we used to hate each other, and we laugh about it. Now she's the person I love the most.
I met her at a game club. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. She was hanging out with another group of gamers. She caught my eye from afar. But being an introvert, I never approached her. All my social energy was being spent on Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't have any energy left to greet anyone new. I didn't even bother, and I kept playing with my friends. I've always been like this. Personally, I like to write. Being a bit of a loner, I have plenty of time to do it, which led me to a website for writing with groups of people. A modern-day Twitter, but in forums. I started talking to people on these forums, and it turns out one of them was this girl. And thank goodness, she directly asked me out. Even though I liked her, I still didn't really feel like going out, but I forced myself to do it. I couldn't miss this opportunity, especially with a girl who was really worth it. For the next 2 years, we started hanging out, but we weren't a couple. We spent time writing and hanging out, but we never had anything more. Maybe I was afraid of losing that friendship, but she graduated and then moved to another city. Little by little, we lost contact. I resigned myself to being single for the rest of my life. And 3 years had passed until, out of nowhere, she appeared as a recommendation on my Facebook. We started chatting, and then having conversations by phone. She was thinking of moving back to the city and getting her own apartment, and she asked me if I wanted to look for apartments with her. She made this several-hour trip, and we went apartment viewings, talking for hours about our lives. At the end of the day, she went back home to the other city. A few weeks later, she told me about this place. It was a theme park in my city. Again, she traveled for hours to get to my city, and then we went to the theme park. We had an amazing time, and again, she went back home. That same night, I realized that I'm the biggest idiot in the world. Nobody travels for hours and hours just to hang out with a friend. But at the same time, I'm the luckiest man alive. The following week, she texted me. It was the sweetest message I've ever received, asking me if the next time she came to my city, I wanted it to be a date. I was the happiest man alive, and obviously I said yes. That same weekend, she came. But this time, she stayed the night with me. That was 2 years ago. We were due in early 2026, and we still laugh about how clumsy I was.
Online dating. For us introverts, getting to know someone is very difficult, especially if we're face-to-face. Sitting down and asking questions to get to know each other is impossible, since we're constantly worried about what they'll think of us. That's why I preferred online interactions. Just chats and maybe voice messages. I preferred it over an in-person date. That's how I met my current wife. I eliminated all the junk and filtered selectively. I had only messaged a handful of women. I only had conversations with 3. And with her, I spent many days talking. I made sure to get to know her for a month, and then we had our first in-person date. We've been together for 8 years now, married.
If you have a love story you want to share, leave your comment, like the video if you liked it, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.